I mentioned in the walk-up to our news about an article Marty Patriquin, a Montreal journalist, wrote 15 years ago, in fact, which is hard to believe that it's been that long. But it caused quite a reaction, not just across the rest of the country. It was published in Maclean's. It was the front cover, by the way, of a shady-looking Bonhomme Carnival carrying a briefcase stuffed with cash. The question then was, is Quebec Canada's most corrupt province? Marty, before we go into what you've now written, I want to go back to that day, because in the article that you wrote on The Logic, there's a great reference. I did not know this. So you obviously faced a lot of backlash at the time for asking or having the temerity to ask the question. You were asked for an apology at the time, were you?
Oh, a bunch. You name it. From Jean Charest onward, or going down. He sent a letter and wanted an official apology.
Wow. Okay.
I think at the time, it was owned by Rogers at the time, and I think Rogers put out one of those kind of, I can say this now because I'm not employed by them anymore, but mealy-mouthed apologies where they sort of like, it's like a non-apology apology, where they're like, we're sorry if you were offended, okay. which are my favorite, and had to give them free advertising. Because here's another thing I did. Well, yeah, here's another thing that I didn't know about the Bonhomme Carnival. I'm a Quebecer, and I've lived here most of my life, but I didn't know that the Bonhomme Carnival in Quebec represents Quebec City. I had no idea. I didn't, like, outside of Quebec, the Bonhomme Carnival is sort of seen as like a representative of Quebec. Like, this is what happens here, white, snow, cold, all that kind of thing. But when you're here, it's actually very associated with Quebec City, which is something I didn't realize at the time. And Quebec City tourism industry, like, took great umbrage at having the Bonhomme Carnival on the cover of Maclean's because, it cast aspersions on the city itself. And that's what they were really mad at. So I seem to recall like getting a Maclean's like a month and a half after this all came out and seeing, like, lo and behold, there was a back cover advertisement for how great the city of Quebec is.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
But you mentioned in this story, I refer, your original story is your claim to shame. Here you are, and basically asking the question again 15 years later. But before I get to that, tell everybody, because you mentioned this in the article, what politician who you reached out to did want to sit and talk to you about what you had written?
A guy named François Legault. You might have heard of him. I think he's the premier of Quebec. And it was sort of like a politically opportune time for him, because the article came out, and basically the genesis and sort of the thesis of the article was, we have a problem with corruption here because there are two entrenched camps, and unlike most societies where governments are voted on or voted out of office depending on how they did on their performance and how popular they are. Here, it's very much based on will you or won't you separate from Canada, and it creates this kind of like dynamic. There's almost like entrenched, I don't know what to call it, attitude or what have you, within politics that has basically caused it to freeze up. There has been no new blood because we're just arguing the same thing over and over again. And I wasn't me that was just saying this, by the way. Like, I quoted people in the article saying this, and including Amir Kadir, actually, from Quebec Solidaire. Anyway, all this to say is, so yeah, I came out and I said this stuff, and Quebec lost its mind. They completely it was really, really quite something, as you said in your opening.
Yeah, and here we are, 15 years later. François Legault is the premier, the one who wanted to talk to you when you first wrote this, because there's, of course, political advantage in it for him. And you're writing this again, asking the question, is Quebec still Canada's most corrupt province? What brought you here?
Well, that was the thing. So Legault comes out and sees that he's starting this new political coalition saying, look, we want not to say the post-national, but they want to get beyond the national question, beyond the issue of sovereignty or no sovereignty. And so what I wrote basically was exactly in line with what he saw. And so whatever, we got together and hung out for a while. And he was like, yeah, I mean, he basically said I was right. And in arguing what I did. And it was a very nice conversation, and some of those ideas, that is to say, and I'm not saying that I came up with them, but some of those ideas that he espoused, such as Quebec is stalling because of we're so preoccupied with this national question, really came to the fore within the party in the run-up to the election, and they ran a couple before he was finally elected premier in 2018.
But you're writing this now from a different perspective of, okay, yeah, all the things he talked about then, here we are finding ourselves basically in the same sort of situation again, whether it's Click, whether it's Northvolt, that's where we are.
Yeah, the one I focused on this is the Click stuff, is the fact that we have these government contracts and just a lot of the things that sort of going on with the Click, that is to say, the cost overruns, the contracts handed out to whoever, the zero accountability to the number of contracts going out the door. I think the number was pegged at during the recent commission, something close to 2,000 contracts that they have no idea where they are and how much they're worth. Like this, it just sort of smacked of that sort of 2012 era Charbonneau Commission stuff for me. What I would say though is that I don't think it's fair to say that this is anything close to what we went through political generation ago, because there wasn't a huge part of the corruption that was going on. The stuff that I was writing about back then had to do with the financing of political parties.
Right.
That isn't the case this time. There's no indication that the Coalition Avenir Quebec is doing anything close to what in the league of what the Liberal Party and the PQ, by the way, to a lesser extent, were doing back in the day. That is to say, getting around, circumventing Quebec's electoral laws by getting people to give the maximum to a party, and then that person and then that company reimbursing the person for the money that they sent to a political party. That's that sort of thing. That hasn't gone on any longer. But what it sort of did do, I was looking at this, and I'm just like, well, what about the other planks of the Coalition Avenir Quebec? So more productivity, for example. Our productivity has gone up a little bit. We're still nowhere close to Ontario, and Ontario always comes up in the mouth of Mr. Legault, always saying, we have to reach Ontario. We have to reach Ontario. We haven't gotten there. We're not even close, and it's taken 7 years. Talks a lot about less government intervention was one of the other key planks in the Coalition Avenir Quebec platform. Now the Coalition Avenir Québec sort of brags a lot about how much they intervene in the economy, mostly by way of Investissement Québec, sound fiscal management. S&P Global just downgraded Quebec's credit rating this spring, less than a month. We have tabled a record $13.6 billion deficit budget. So all is to say is that the corruption, maybe not the corruption, it hasn't reached quite that level, but it was really a reflection for me to look back at what Mr. Legault was saying to me back then, and the extent to which he hasn't come anywhere close to meeting the goals of the party, lofty as they were.
Sounds like corruption's been replaced, Marty, by
run of the mill lethargy or whatever. Yeah,
it's instead of one, it's another. Just inefficiency, call it what you will, but here you go. When you're looking at numbers like $500 million wasted on in this case that Click, the money in Northvolt, the money in Lion Electric, so much for sound fiscal management as you describe it, right?
Yeah, and look. I also, but at the same time, and this wasn't something I wrote about this week, but I mean, the examples of Lion Electric and Northvolt, et cetera, I understand that there is an aspect of risk when you're investing in clean tech and green tech, necessarily. We are right at the beginning of it, right? So you're bound to lose out on certain investments. That said, that what is impressive, and a bad impressive, not a good impressive, is the extent to which those have fallen through. Like, as you mentioned, Northvolt, Lion Electric. These are, huge amounts of money poured into these things. And Legault basically staked his sort of green reputation on them, and they really haven't gone anywhere. That's an unfortunate part of the story.
Also, might be worth pointing out as well, there's been basically no price to pay, right? Ministers, we found out, just let this stuff go on. No one's had to resign. I mean, Pierre Fitzgibbon left on his own. Eric Kerr, I guess, the one guy at SACLIC. But, as far as the transport minister, there's no price to pay here for having made bad decisions.
No, except I think sort of taken in the aggregate, there has been a somewhat, because Legault, for a variety of different reasons, I think this one included, is very, very unpopular right now. There's a sense of fin de regime right now in the government. And the problem is twofold. It's not particularly popular. And the other aspect is, like, if Legault were to go, who replaces him?
Right.
And anybody who replaces them will necessarily lose out on the coalition part of Coalition Avenir Quebec, because they come from the nationalist and federalist camp. And that was the sort of the conclusion of what I wrote this week, is that, what's going to replace the CAQ in the next election? It's either going to be the Liberals and the PQ. Well, we're back to where we were, 12 years ago.
Same old.
Exactly.
Does this spell the end, do you think, for the CAQ as a party?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's an end, a complete end, because there has always been a right of center movement within the province, and it's it hasn't, whether it was Coalition Avenir Quebec, Marie Dumont and the ADQ, that kind of thing. I think there'll always be an aspect of that, and given a proper leader, I think that can come back. But there is a real sense that the government has been around for, this government has served its purpose, and that we need to move on. And moving on means move back to the future.
By the way, I have to wrap up, but I didn't bring up anything about Montreal, this whole engineering consultancy thing, which I'm sure you've seen this by now. Linda Goulart wrote a great piece in the Gazette about this, about the money we're wasting, if you will, in the city. Yeah. But that's for another day, Marty. So we'll leave that for next time.
That's another day, yeah.
All right. Marty Patriquin, it's in The Logic if you want to read it. It's a really, really great piece. Marty, thanks so much. Appreciate the time.